What do you go with?
I'm calling this meeting of the Shorewood Village Board to order at 7:40. Let's start with all trustees are present except for President Rosick, who is excused. Has this meeting been noticed in accordance with applicable law and regulation?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
For this meeting, we start with a special order of business, and it's my pleasure to present a proclamation for bench donation in honor of Timothy Wick. And I note that his family is seated in the front row there.
Yes.
So, proclamation recognizing Timothy D. Wick. Whereas Timothy D. Wick served as a volunteer auxiliary police officer from 1975 to 1992 for the village of Shorewood, and whereas Timothy D. Wick served 2 elected terms as village trustee from 1992 to 1998, chairing the Judiciary, Personnel and Licensing Committee, the Development and Long Range Planning Committee, the Streets and Buildings Committee, and the Police and Fire Commissions, and whereas Timothy D. Wick exemplified a passion for local issues affecting residents and the local business community, and whereas Timothy D. Wick was a business owner of Wick's Beer and Liquor on 4496 North Oakland Avenue from September 1983 to March 2012, and whereas the family of Timothy D. Wick would like to donate a total of $3,135.28 for a new bench outside of 4496 North Oakland Avenue to commemorate the life of Timothy D. Wick. Now therefore, be it resolved that the village accepts this gift and thanks both Timothy D. Wick for his years of service to the Shorewood community, as well as his family for their support and generosity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would the family like to say anything?
You don't have to. You would be so happy. Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee back first.
So we used to always walk up to the popcorn stand out there with my kids when they were really little.
Yeah.
You have that one?
That's all that, yeah.
Okay, I will let you know that that was a very fun thing for my small kids and my ex and I to do. So
Thank
we
you.
really enjoyed it, and I'm really, thank you for the bench and for all the service.
Yeah, when I first moved to the village, I actually was a tenant. I lived in
Oh.
and I
Small
really
world.
appreciate, yeah,
Small
Tim was
world.
always such a big part of this community and
Definitely.
any business and just
Yes.
really a center of the community. So thank you for the donation.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
And I remember Wicks from growing up here. Thank you so much. At an appropriate age. Thank you so much for the donation.
Thank you all for your time.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, let's move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any items to be removed?
Yeah, I'd like to go item D and item F.
Pulling items D and F.
D or B?
D is in dog.
D and F.
Having a rough start to the meeting. Let's get pulling items D and F. Any other trustees wish to pull any agenda items? Hearing none, all those in favor with D and F removed? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Now I'll turn it over to trustee Menta for item F, or item D, sorry.
I talked to Tyler earlier today, he's not here. I did watch the video, since I missed the last meeting where this was discussed. I'm concerned about a couple of things that were discussed at the board, but that didn't make it into the final version. And I just feel like there are parts that are unclear still in the way that they're written, and because this is a policy that I think, 10 years from now, someone is going to be like reading it and trying to interpret future situations based on the policy. I just feel like the areas that are unclear should be clear. So I'd like to pull it, have a chance to meet with Tyler, and possibly, he said if they were things that he could change and bring back, that would probably be the best way to approach it.
Okay.
So I'd move that we reconsider this, I think even at our February 17th meeting.
How do we
That we-
defer?
Yeah, to defer to our
Okay.
February 17th meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah, and yeah. And then I did also want to just note, I did watch the meeting, and there was some discussion about an open records request that was made to me personally about a Facebook post. And I did just want to clarify that our attorney's opinion at the time was that the post expresses personal feelings of the trustee concerning performance of current and past committee or board members. It does not reference or advocate a position on any specific item currently before government. My opinion is that it constitutes quote-unquote personal content and that it's not a public record as contemplated by Wisconsin's open records statutes. I did voluntarily provide the post to the person who requested it, just in terms of being transparent, fully transparent, but I just wanted to clarify that the determination at that time was not that the record in question was subject to public records. So I just wanted to clarify that also.
Thank you. So we have a motion by trustee Menta, a second by trustee Maher. Further discussion, trustee Maher?
I would just like to remove, or either amend it or remove at the February 17th. I think it should be up to the standard protocol, which is determined by the village manager in conjunction with the president. So I say that we defer it, I'm fine with that, but I'm not okay with putting a date when it needs to be referred to, because that's not really up to us.
I'm okay with that.
Trustee Menta is, it sounds like we have a friendly amendment to defer it, but not necessarily, not specify a date within the context of the motion.
It would be helpful when it comes back if it could be, we could, the changes could be highlighted, so we don't have to reread the document looking for.
Yep.
So any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Go back to trustee Menta for item 5F.
Yeah, I just, so this building, they, the park here, yeah, so they just, I looked at the picture, and it's like this kind of what Metro Market has, this aluminum thing. What, is it supposed to be an aesthetic enhancement?
And the contractor here as well, my understanding is an aesthetic enhancement to signify, more prominently the entrance to the building. But it's aesthetic, it's not functional in terms of need. It is an aesthetic thing that would offset the entrance to the building, is my understanding. And the contractor may or may not have more, but that's how it's presented to the design review board.
Okay, I just want, I personally don't find that it enhances the look of the building or the streetscape, so I just wanted to vote separately on it. I don't know how, whatever, I just wanted to be able to vote on it.
Did the contractor have any further clarification?
Well, so with the new renovations to the building, this is more of a modern aesthetic, so it brings up the building appearance as well, because this is a more modern approach to it, so we're trying to bring up the overall appearance of the building. There are plans to add them to other elevations, but that's down the road, so that's not what we're seeking approval for right now. But overall, it just adds a kind of clean aesthetic entryway entering the building.
When did it become,
Was it always called the Sheridan, or is that a new name?
That's the new development name, yeah. So that, the Sheridan is technically the apartments from the second floor upward, and then the ground level tenants are all individual based. So groom for men, the hair salon, exercise coach, etc.
Trustee McKay?
I would move to approve the application for special privilege for a sunshade or signage projecting over the public right of way at 3575 North Oakland Avenue.
Second.
So we have a motion by trustee McKay and a second by trustee Bachhorst, I believe. Do we have any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-1. Next we move on to public hearings, which we have done. And the agenda item after that is citizens to be heard. Anyone from the gallery wish to be heard tonight? If so, please proceed to the mic and say your name and address. Seeing none, we move on to new business. First item of new business, consider resolution 2020-03, adopting October 3rd, 2020 as World Migratory Bird Day. Rebecca, do we have a presenter on?
I can assist in this area. It's an annual resolution that we do in order for fulfilling our Bird City USA requirement for certification. The resolution is the same as it has been in years past. This time we're looking for the board's approval.
Trustee McKay?
I would make a motion to move to adopt resolution 2020-03 proclaiming October 3rd, 2020 as International Migratory Bird Day in the Village of Shorewood.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a roll call vote for this item.
Trustee Menta.
Aye.
Trustee Maher.
Aye.
Trustee Carpenter.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee McKay.
Yes.
Trustee Ward.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda, I anticipate I will turn this over to Bart very shortly, is to consider acceptance and next steps for the transportation and parking analysis. Bart?
Thank you, Trustee Warren. So one point of clarification, we did create the agenda prior to last Thursday night's presentation from the consultants, at which point we received the direction that the board would not be accepting the plan, but rather receiving the plan. That being said, we also identified that there were several things within the plan that needed to be amended prior to that. So at this point, considering acceptance of it is not contemplated within my memo, so it's just, we had the agenda created before that. So at this point, we would like for some direction pertaining to the proposed implementation charts that were provided. So I don't have the page numbers in front of me, but there were two charts, Excel charts. One pertaining specifically to parking recommendations and one to transportation. Village Manager Ewald and I sat down about a week or so ago with the present draft that identified any particular actions that were listed within the plan, or the analysis, I should say, not the plan. And with that, we identified a level of classification or priority that would help us in determining how to identify our work plans moving forward and get the actions that we need in order to help move these ideas forward. So on the parking side of things, we've identified several high priorities. These are larger policy kind of discussions that are currently within the analysis as recommendations, but as I made clear at the meeting on Thursday, the recommendations are just that at this point. They're not, we're not set in stone to act on them. And so these high priority discussions would take place on a policy level to determine whether or not the board would like staff to pursue those recommendations. So within there, we have some high priority actions of night parking permits to explore whether or not Staff should work on that.
Was this the where is this chart?
It is on page 183 of the
It
packet.
was a revised packet, or was it?
Revised packet, yep.
I sent out the amendment on Friday afternoon in a new link, and then I did drop off a packet at the library for you. I don't know if you just picked one up or not.
You do have a paper packet.
Yeah, use at least something, okay.
Trustee Bowers?
Would this make sense to bring this back into committee? Or do this now?
Right, did you hear the
So, it was our hope or my hope tonight to have at least some discussion on it, and then also within the memo, I did note that staff's recommended committee structure would be to maintain the advisory group, because they have a diverse set of outputs, so we would like at least to engage them at some point as well. I think, and Village Manager, you all can weigh in here too, the primary purpose of this was to kind of firm up work plans for the year, and so it's not necessarily to ask whether or not the policy itself is worth adopting, it's more so to confirm that this makes sense in terms of bringing it back to the board for consideration.
Are you talking about kind of, thank you very much for going through and kind of identifying quick action, high priority, I think that's good. Are you talking about us kind of signing off on that process, or signing off on the buckets things are grouped into? I guess, I just kind of want to get clear on the direction that you're looking for from us tonight.
Sure, to me, it's more of a process.
Yes, I would concur with that.
So yeah, at least I'm pretty looking forward to guidance on how I can set up my next couple months to bring items back to whether it's the advisory group or whether it's to a committee or whether it's the full board for discussion. But I don't want to assume that because it's in there as a high priority that the board wants me to be working on it quite yet, or anyone else to be working on it, right? So we went through and identified that these are the larger topic concepts, and that we would then procedurally bring them back as we can fit them into our schedule.
So just clarifying the question. So the things identified as high priority, we're taking these kind of policy discussions as to whether we want to implement, knowing that we'll have to have further discussions, both as committees and a full board. The quick action items are stuff that you could pull out and just start working on independently without further board direction. Is that the way you're looking at it?
Correct, so there's some things identified as quick action, there's also things identified as quick action with annual recurrence. Then there are quick action with village board consideration, so you do approve loading zones, things like that, but that could be relatively quick without a large policy at committee level kind of debate. So we are looking forward to implementing those quick actions as soon as we can, because we do think that they're actionable. And so there's a two-part request that is correct. The first one, to confirm that our quick actions are actionable, and then secondly, to identify that the policy discussions that we've identified are what you're looking for us to bring back.
So sorry, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse.
No, please go for it.
So anything marked quick action without a VE behind it would be something tonight, if we said, okay, this looks good, you would start an implementation, and anything that's QA with no VE behind it.
Correct, we'd at least lay the groundwork for those
Okay.
things, correct.
Would there be a checkpoint where you come back to us before, or is it just gonna, and I'm not making any kind of judgment here, I'm just asking, is it gonna be something that just gets done, if we sign off on that tonight?
So depending on whose work plan it fits in and who, is assigned to it, our hope is that it gets done relatively soon, but I can tell you expand shared parking agreements, for example, doing customer service, they're busy doing elections, and so it's just a matter of fitting it in when we can, but it would be the expectation that it would be soon.
Okay,
Maybe not in the next 2 weeks, but this spring, for example.
okay.
Can we maybe start with a quick action, just like school district intermediate? I remember the discussion of moving the buses, but you say add crosswalk. Was that one of their recommendations?
Correct, so they wanted to move the bus stop, and I believe the bus stop might have allowed for a crosswalk, or required for them to be relocated, but it was two parts on that. I think they were connected at some.
Was that be a mid-block crosswalk?
Oh, trust you, and I don't know offhand exactly where the recommendation is, and they didn't plan with me, but possibly correct. I thought the recommendation for the crosswalk was.
Was there yeah. The one, I think the school, QAVB, school district Lake Bluff, where they've asked for where you've suggested a loading zone, a handicap loading zone. And I know that's been one that the school district and the Lake Bluff community has been waiting on for a while, since they've had the ADA entrance to the front for, I don't know, over a year now, hasn't it been? So, I mean, that's one that came up at the transportation meeting, that I was at, and that people have spoken to me about, and I feel that we should definitely fast track that. Also the intermediate moving the bus, where the buses are, certainly made sense when I read that, but I'm not sure about a crosswalk. Because I know there's been discussion, and actually, I think Rachel Ellerman from Penn Bike Safety brought up on some of the suggestions this consultant made about crossing Capitol, and also about a mid-block crosswalk on Morris, where SIS is, that there's, so these were different than the suggestions of the safe routes, just or the safe school route, whatever that consultant was. So, I mean, we've got kind of different consultant opinions here, so, and I'm a little nervous.
I'd be fine removing that from the quick action, if that's the desire of. The signage, I think, is a pretty quick thing to do if it is.
I mean, just me personally, I'm fine. I think it does make sense to move the buses, because it blocks the traffic from the left. You really are coming out of that driveway, you can't see because the bus is there, so that makes sense. I'm just not sure about a crosswalk. Can you tell me the high school permit parking? What was that recommendation?
So currently within the code, and as signed on Oakland Avenue, there's a bunch of daytime restrictions that require permits. And we received several questions throughout the process that says, you know, I want to park there while I go to work up at the fitness center, or vice versa. Within the process, I've asked the school district to identify if they're actually using those permits, because no one has sold them in years. And so the consultants have suggested they're not needed, but that we should take one more step to confirm that with the school district before modifying our ordinance to remove that permit as an option. But they have not been sold in recent past, to the point where I think that people didn't realize that the signage was still out there. But it is one of those things where we would like to go back to the school district just to confirm once more that in fact there is no need for that.
That's a permit to park on Oakland Avenue for how long? All
Throughout the day.
Yeah, I don't think that, how much is that?
I don't think it's been sold for a long time, so I couldn't tell you. Once again, it's a remnant of the code that is still visible on the signs. And that's where, and once again, I've only been here for 2 years and a couple months, right? I've never heard of it. I asked customer service, or I asked the police department, no one's really familiar with this existing. Even the school district principal, when I asked him, he was not familiar with what I was asking about. So it's just kind of a cleanup thing, that the sign can't be changed until the ordinance is changed.
Right.
So, Trustee Meyer, did you have something?
It would be helpful, I mean, you've got a lot of quick actions, and some of these gonna take a little bit of time, each one, I mean, you don't have a lot.
Like I said, absolutely.
Quick action might be a couple of years.
I'm still reviewing the revised draft they gave me, some housing study that's going on. I've got a comp plan RFP is coming up next, so I would not assume that if you say quick action, that it's gonna happen on Wednesday.
No, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like daytime districts consolidating the district, I mean, that, you gotta revise the order, you gotta notify, you gotta, I mean.
And that one, I believe, is a post-implementation, so apologies if the notations get confusing there, but, so that's a quick action once the other ordinances are adopted. PI. So that's post-implementing of the top priorities, so we've identified that those top priorities need to be discussed and agreed upon, and then once those are done, these other ones could be more quickly modified.
Trustee Backhorst?
So I just wanted to, sorry for asking this again, but just to clarify, so tonight you want process. So in the process that you're recommending, we want to know if that's.
Yeah, in terms of process, that we as staff would be reviewing these high priority items first to bring back when we can fit them into our time schedule. But then, to the other point, anything item that's quick action that does not need board approval, that we would be able to move forward with that. But most of the quick action does still need village board approval, it just be a matter of, so if we can fit it in.
So I
on the
guess
agenda.
the reason I ask this is because instead of going through and like coming up, I don't want to spend all of our time. If you have a recommendation of a process, I would think that would make a lot more sense than us designing a committee right now.
And that was what Rebecca and I intended when we put this together, was that it was just gonna help you identify what we would recommend working on.
Sure.
I think part of this was if for some reason the board says absolutely do not spend any time on changing winter parking, here would be an
Well, it
opportunity to
sounds
tell
like
us,
we
but
need to have a committee, a cow meeting to discuss this because we can't come up with all these things right now.
Yeah, because I would, trustee Gardner.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely trust, if you're saying that these top 5 things are the high priority that you can fit in, I trust, and after sitting through the transportation meetings, I trust the recommendations as well as your ability to manage that workload to make those high priority items happen. So I'm just a little bit confused. Are you looking for us to give you guidance as to, yes, make these high priority items happen in the next, 6 months or year, whatever, and then tackle those quick action items? Or are you looking for us to say which ones are more high priority?
I'm not, and maybe I'm not being, so we went through the plan and said, okay, if we were to do these, what order we take them in, who would be working on it, et cetera. So understanding the plan has not been formally received yet either, perhaps is somewhat confusing because, we had the presentation on Thursday. Our expectation was the presentation would present us a final plan, we'd come here on analysis. We'd come here today and do everything at once, obviously that couldn't happen. So we still thought it was worthy to keep this on the discussion table because process-wise, this is how I would be moving forward with my year. And so a lot of that, as you can see, is policy discussions of bigger changes. The quicker actions, I don't think necessarily will require a lot of committee meetings or things like that, so that we can do, I think, pretty independently. What I'm mostly interested in is procedurally fitting in these high priority items into my work schedule, potentially working with other people to get them in time for budgetary, needs and things like that. So,
Thank you for your work putting this together. I guess conceptually for me, the approach makes sense, dividing them out this way. I guess the issue that I'm seeing is that just some of the quick action items, board members, myself included, might not be comfortable moving forward with each and every one of them. So I guess, are you saying that you want us to agree that this looks like a good process? And by and large, I think the recommendations are on point, and it's very nicely laid out. Or are you looking for us to actually go through and say, do this one, but don't do this one? Or is that something that we do? That seems more like committee work to me.
yeah, I wasn't looking for that level of action.
Well, one aspect to keep in mind as part of this recommendation is to also keep intact and engage the transportation committee, which is really a conduit of all of our other groups who have intersected with this topic, to keep them almost as a recommending group to you on some of these topics so that the board is not alone in the work that they're doing. The reason why we're suggesting that in this case is because they do represent, they're a product of all the committees that you've had engaged working on this topic. We also recognize that these groups are subject to change, as well as you as a board are subject to change. We're going to have new members coming on in spring. Your standing committees and those roles and designations also change on an annual basis. So we recognize that in some of these recommendations, they're going to take a little while. And I think I also appreciate from a board perspective that you may want to have your best team leaning into some of those policy questions and suggestions before they get to you. And so as this, the TAG, I'm sorry, forgot the acronym. So the TAG is the group that has been doing that with you guys before. And they have also voiced and expressed the interest of continuing to do that because it is the best collaborative group that's representative of a lot of the volunteer committees and stakeholder groups who have engaged in the process already. So we don't want to lose that momentum, but then hopefully can use that process and then bring different recommendations to you as that group leans into those questions a bit more. You as a board are always welcome to engage in the TAG. And I believe it also has a trustee representative, which at this time is trustee Maher.
Trustee Bachhorst?
So what I would recommend, I don't know how you guys feel about this, is that you guys continue working with the TAG and then bring things back to us as it makes sense. And so, and I can't determine what that timeline is, I don't think any of us can here tonight, but.
Yeah, I think that's what we get the opportunity for the board to see what we're planning on doing and making sure it's not completely out of line clear. It sounds like there's a lot of support for us to keep the momentum going on this. And so this was primarily an opportunity for discussion, understand that we just all met on Thursday night. There might be some things fresh in your minds. It will be coming back on the 17th for receipt of the plan, and so I did receive a revised version Friday afternoon. I have not gotten through to make sure that those, final 10 things that I had requested are in there, but my expectation is that it will come back for the next board meeting for receipt of that, at which point you'd have further opportunity to discuss any of these if for some reason, you want to see things in a different priority, but this is how I have read the plan and how the analysis and how I would act upon it.
Yeah, I think we're in a little bit of a chicken egg situation because if for example, winter parking and alternate side parking, like if we decide to do alternate side parking, then then we would get rid of winter parking rules. So I think it would be good for us to at least have one CAL or one study session after we have the final plan and we can look at these. And for us to kind of because if there's something where there's really not support on the board, overnight parking, for example, if there just isn't support for that, then I'm not sure it's worth staff time or bringing it to the TAG and having them come back to us. So, I think we could have like one high level, I would support having one high level discussion, just, are these things that we even have any interest in pushing forward?
I agree with that. I think that's a good putting that forward.
And I'm fine with a high-level discussion, but I'd also like to realize that we can throw as much time into this as, we all have available. So to that point, maybe if there are any items on here that are so glaring that some of us would never want to see, maybe that would be the way to look at it and say, okay, these are my areas of concern, and then aggregate them. I don't know if public safety or will address this, and then, at least we could kind of get a feel for if we need to have. Because I really don't want to spend 3-4 hours going through point by point with this board. I could much more efficiently tackle all that by myself.
Yeah, I was not seeking a motion or any sort of approval of this tonight. It really was just a discussion, and so if it is more clear to wait for the receipt of the plan and then bring it back to whether it's a COW or a different body. We just had the opportunity and the time to have on tonight's agenda, so.
And I think we're all going to the same place here, which is that we want to see what in this the board supports moving forward, and if there are any the board does not support at all, and take those, either put those in or take those out. So.
Well, and we did invest a large amount of money in the study. It was our #1 priority for the year. I think it deserves some attention and some time as a board for us to discuss, what we see moving forward, what we even want to consider exploring moving forward with, or if there are things that we just don't see as things that we could support.
And since we have spent all this money, some of these quick action things, we should move forward on it. At least show quick results for this evolved process. And I was a little disappointed in I expected more public showing up at the meetings, and this last meeting, there was Facebook posts, get out, parking's the biggest issue in the village, and, I look back at it, so definitely more communications. I think if we're gonna move forward on some of these, definitely got to check in with the community differently.
Trustee McCabe.
Thank you. I'm not going to be here by the time you get to the high priority things, but I would suggest that the ones that could have a budgetary impact would be very good to look at as soon as possible, just in terms of our work plan, so that
do you have kind of what you need in terms of a rough outline? And I know that you're just kind of, want us to have a preliminary conversation, we haven't even
Yep.
received the plan yet, so I think that.
Yeah, I haven't seen, a large objection to what we put together so far, so I think that's a good positive step in terms of understanding that we've got our, stuff ready to go when that conversation wants to happen. But yeah, to Trustee Minnick's point, budget will be here sooner than we realize, and so having these discussions will be necessary in this spring/summer. As part of it, if you've looked close enough, I have suggested perhaps hiring a planning intern to help me identify, signage and things like that. So these things do piggyback on each other, that I'm just looking for direction. If there was any yay or nay, sounds like there's not a huge opposition to what I've identified here, so I'm going to pursue it accordingly and bring it back once the plan has been received, just for confirmation of any particular items that you might want to discuss more specifically. But I am happy with the direction that was voiced for what it's worth tonight.
Yeah, Trustee.
When we talk about it in the CAL or whatever we do, it'd be good for us to look at things that we'd like to see in next year's budget, because some of these things are not going to be in next year's budget, but maybe some of the crosswalk improvements or street light at Glenda, I don't know, whatever, Ken Weber list. So that may be something that we need to, sooner than later, that we as a board need to start talking about.
Trustee Bachhorst, did you have something?
Oh, no, just happy to move on.
Thank you, Bart. I think I already suggested next step, we'll receive the plan on the 17th. And then my goal, because we need to start, particularly on we need to start on the policy component of where the temperature check is on parking. Because those are the ones that really need to turn around from an implementation standpoint the quickest, because they procedurally ramp up our different resources. So I'd suggest that we start there on March 2nd, our first meeting in March. We won't be able to allocate the entire standing committee time to it, but I'll identify an hour to just kind of start talking on those. And then for some of the quick action, I'd like to take an opportunity to talk with Bart and potentially bring those forward as time is available. I know one will be before you on February 17th, which will be the school district's ADA loading zone application. So that's an example for you of something that, okay, we want to tackle that, at that point. But I think that we have to start work soon.
Sure.
Because I know I'm working in 2021 already. So, and to Trustee Amanda's point, on the transportation side, it is very budget heavy. I mean, those are large dollars, really large dollars. I mean, Nathan was just sitting beside me saying, oh, signal at Oakland and Kensington, and I was like, that may be exciting, it's $250,000. And while I'm not trying to place a judgment on that, that is like, when you get down to that budgeting side, it's a really intense discussion for you, for everybody. It's how do we want to allocate this, and how do we get our bigger bang for the buck, how do we look at that within the scope of the next 5 years?
Trustee Bachhorst?
Yeah, no, especially with some of those large ticket items, as well as policy changes that might be potentially pretty radical. Some thoughts, and I'm not suggesting that we do this, but this might be a cause for referendum. I don't mean in increasing taxes, I mean, a ballot question for some of the things. I don't know if we've had that as far as overnight parking is concerned on the ballot in Shorewood of late. So just throwing that out there, I guess the next time would be in the fall, right? If we were.
I don't know if we could get it on anymore that soon.
Yeah.
And we might have missed that deadline.
For the fall?
So it would have to be, that stuff moves pretty quick.
I know. It's,
Yeah.
yeah. That's why in my internal Friday updates, Sarah was kind enough to kind of break down by month. I think some people, they hear election, and it actually starts like 6 months in advance or more in some cases in terms of that.
I took the November election, you say that.
I have to check on the dates, but by the time you need signatures and things, depending on how that looks.
Right, I was gonna say, there's two ways to do it, right? We could do it, or a resident could petition.
And you're talking about advisory. correct?
Advisory,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we could, if that was an option, that would be a great thing to fund, right? To trustee Bachler's point, you know, because it's tough. I mean, we tried all these different communication modes.
I mean, and it's gonna be a.
We're running out of
It's
ideas on how to
challenging.
trying to communicate, so it's, maybe that is a tool that you guys will say, hey, this merits it.
I mean, we did have it on the community survey, and I think it was like 55-45 or 60-40 or something like that in favor of getting rid of it.
Correct, thank you.
I mean, this is an I mean, we keep saying plan, but it's an analysis. We have not adopted, this is none of, these are just technical analysis of the current situation and possible moving forward in another. And I think you need a lot more staff. I mean, we had all those questions on alternate side, and I know DPW, you know, if you're gonna go out, once you start, if you want community buy-in, you're gonna need to know a little more on the details of how this is gonna operate, permitting, how are you gonna, I mean, so a lot, staff time will be needed. I noticed on this chart, it starts with drafting ordinance. I think there's a lot more work just taking what they did and figuring out exactly how it might work in our operations. You're gonna need it, yeah.
So for the purposes of this meeting, Rebecca, Bart, do you have direction you need?
Yes.
There's a lot more to come on this.
Yes, I just wanted to give the opportunity for people who weigh in, and I think I've gotten clear enough support for my procedural plan, so we'll bring it back as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consider RFP for comprehensive planning services. And I imagine, Bart, you are staying up at the podium for this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have. So the Plan Commission did recommend the version that is within your packet tonight. One thing of note is that plan, the RFP is not to be issued until February 18th. So once again, we have the opportunity tonight to look at it. If there are no desires to change anything, we could adopt it and I could publish it sooner if possible. But I did build in that cushion, just understand that it might take some discussion. The Plan Commission did last year discuss whether or not a complete rewrite was required or if an update would be more appropriate for what we need to get out of this plan, identifying that we're doing the housing study right now, we're doing a transportation analysis, we've done the long-range planning in terms of utilities and public facilities in the past. Could we just incorporate some of that use and then spend our time and effort on specific aspects of the plan that we don't typically look at, or we haven't typically looked at in a long time. So the Plan Commission has recommended that version of an update, focusing on 3 specific required elements. And so the state statutes identify what elements are required. So the Plan Commission did recommend that the consultant be utilized heavily on the issues and opportunities section to kind of outline, what are the current issues and opportunities in the village. Within the housing one, they would assist utilizing current data that we're gathering right now. Same thing with transportation, utilities, community facilities, natural and cultural resources, that's largely open space and parks, which the Parks Committee will be working on as well. Economic development, strategic planning is kind of taking over that kind of conversation, so they'd be assisting on identifying the efforts of that. Then the Plan Commission did identify intergovernmental cooperation as something that they thought that we don't typically look at that could be utilized more intensively within the process. And then they were highly focused on land use and identifying any things that would require zoning and or future land use confirmation with community involvement. So they were looking at those 3 being the primary utilization of the consultant. The budget process did identify $30,000, up to $30,000 of capital funding for this effort. So it would be my goal to publish this and get responses based on that and identify whether or not this is feasible within that budget amount. I do think it is based on other communities that I've talked with. So ideally we can get perhaps a little less even, but.
So Bart, just one question for me. So categorizing this as an update as opposed to a rewrite, that still allows us to be in compliance with the applicable statute, right?
Yep. Yeah, some communities, quite honestly, just adopt their existing plan and move on with it that way. It's a lazy effort that I wouldn't recommend, we consider, but I think it gives us opportunity to identify the areas that we want to focus in on, and once again, we can incorporate existing or current efforts for those other elements. So,
Trustee Blackhurst, and trustee Menta, then trustee Bonner.
Well, I was just gonna make a motion to consider the RFP for comprehensive planning services. I don't know if I need to put in up to $30,000.
Second.
Motion to the second. Discussion beginning with trustee Menta.
Would this encompass the zoning, updating zoning code or no?
I wouldn't expect it to give specific recommendations on that, but it would look at the zoning code and tell us whether or not it was outdated or could be updated in general terms. But I don't think
That's a separate.
correct.
Okay,
I would not expect that to be able to be covered with it.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a big job.
yes, correct.
Trustee Bonner, did you have something?
No, second.
A motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Blackhurst.
Thank you. So I'd like to suspend the rules, ask that we suspend the rules and move item 9D to after 11, because I know that our village attorney would be leaving.
Oh, I was just gonna offer to step out so that, you know, you
Oh, you're gonna
could
come back
open
in?
frank discussion without me here, but whatever you want me to do.
Well, it would make sense to do that, then we don't have to
Right.
use more put on,
Okay, so,
thinking of our budget.
so I'll second moving up. Moving up 11.
9 to after Article 11.
Like, would be 11B.
I'll second that. Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. So now we will consider, move to item 11, items for future consideration, starting with.
Oh, no, sorry.
Reports.
Okay. Reports of village officials. So village president is excused from this meeting. Any reports from the trustees? Well, I guess I'll report that I attended a potluck gathering yesterday, put on by Shorewood Moving Forward, where they discussed the Black Lives Matter movement and kind of a summary of that and kind of the way its relation to the schools. It was a really interesting discussion and with a very touching poem by two students. Trustee Menta also attended. Any other reports?
I had some other sad news. I don't know if you folks saw it, but Dorothy Hoffman, who was our Hoffman Cleaners, lived in Shorewood her whole life. She was 95. She was very active in the Historical Society. She was one of those people that remember verbally. She, early days, she'd go down the street and tell you where the grocery stores were and everything. So it's a real loss to the community. But she was very active in the Historical Society and sharing with everyone her stories of the past and what it was like to grow up in Shorewood in the 20s and 30s.
And she did the justice request
Oh, yeah.
in high school.
Any other trustee reports?